I was thinking to start, for those people who are watching who maybe don't know you or your work, if you could do like a quick self-introduction, who you are, what it is that you do.
Okay, I'm Anita Chan. I'm a Canadian Chinese, now living in Hong Kong, running a company called Compass Edge. It's actually a company focusing to work with hotels in the hospitality industry to help them to break into the China market.
I think you have an interesting story in that it's different from a lot of people that I've interviewed. That like, you are kind of originally Chinese, but then you left at a young age,
right? And
then you grew up abroad, but then you kind of decided to come back.
Right.
A lot of people that I interviewed, either they are completely foreigners just entering into China, or they are kind of like more like return Chinese, where they sort of grew up here and then went abroad to study or to work and then came back. So I'd love to dig a little bit into your story as to like, why did you decide to come back to China, to Hong Kong, and like why have you stayed? Why did you set up business here?
Actually, I was born in Hong Kong, and actually it's quite a typical Hong Kong story. That at the time, a lot of Hong Kong families would want to immigrate, to Canada, to US, Australia, for political reason, and for the 1997 handover. So only my family moves a little bit earlier, and that's why I was pretty much grown up and educated there. And it's the story, it's a love story.
So when you originally came back here, you were working for a while. I'd love to hear that transition. Right? So like you're working and you at some point got to a stage where you're like, let me kind of start to run my own thing, or let me start to sort of get into my own sort of business. And how did that transition happen?
Actually I moved back, I have a job already. Because the company that hired me in Canada at the time really want me to continue to work for them. So, they look at the portfolio, at that time they were working with independent hotels. And they say, there are tons of opportunity in Asia. You go and be the VP of Asia Pac and just run it for me, out from that part of the world. So actually I got a job offer already when I first moved back to Hong Kong. And that company was sold. And then I move on to work for a UK company, a top digital marketing agency. And then I move on to work for what we call OTA, online travel agency. At that time, it's quite big. It's Orbitz, and later on, being purchased. And then I work for small luxury hotel of the world. Always in the hotel industry, always working for small independent luxury hotels. And at that time, I was a silent investor of Compass Edge. Actually, Compass Edge was founded in 2008. At that time, I'm not really involved in the day-to-day, but we have some money, and we say, we would like to help some startup, and we'll put the money in. But we want very clean cut and say, I have a job, a very good job. I do not want to mess it up, so I remain very separate, only as an investor. So, the story, comes, it has a very great first few years, up until about 2013, when I explained to you the whole travel dynamics shift, What Compass Edge used to provide is some kind of booking mechanism on individual hotels' website. So if you go to a hotel you're interested in, go into their website. When you press book now, it actually go to what we call our booking engine. So we handle their reservation perspective, and we also do marketing for the independent hotels. But around 2013, 2014, huge landscape, change. OTAs, what we call, like Agoda, Booking.com, Expedia, are up and rising. And later on, MetaSearch, Trivago, everyone's know, Hotel Combined, Kayak, they are doing huge advertising on TVs, becoming so household. That is so difficult for independent hotel to really get booking, even with a good booking mechanism online. So at that time, about 2013, we look at the numbers. I do not know, why other competitors are still thinking, we are doing well. I honestly do not think anyone is doing well, but, we look at the real numbers and say, it's not going to work that way if we continue. Okay, either we call it off, or we we transform the company into something that the independent hotels will want to have, and that will have a steady revenue stream. Okay, so when I because I'm on the advisory, even as a silent investor, I look at what is, like the direct booking is going down for independent hotels, but what is up and rising? Okay, at that arena at the time, China. Okay, Chinese outbound tourism. Actually, from the statistics, 2014, people are no longer traveling just to Hong Kong and Macau and Taiwan. They are really wanting to venture out. The passport, like the requirement has been loosened from the Chinese government, so they can actually travel to a lot of places, and they're excited to do that because they don't have the opportunity before. So now they venture out in the world and they try to travel on their own a little bit more and more adventurous. And we see kind of a hockey stick kind of impact from 2014 and say, okay, that is up and rising. And then looking at Compass Edge capability, that's something we can do, okay, because we have staff that can fluently, communicate in Chinese and also understand the Western world. And we have a good portfolio of independent hotels that will want this kind of business. So looking at the macro environment, looking at what our capability, what we can do, we say, okay, let's focus on and let's come up with that kind of a China product, helping independent hotels to go into that market. So at that point of time, the investors, the board is saying, okay, either I'm in or we don't do it. Okay, so I quit my job and go into Compass Edge full-time, running as the CEO since 2014. Long story.
Being sort of ethnically Chinese, having been born here and sort of in your family, there's a certain amount of the culture that you kind of just get, right?
Yeah, of course.
And then growing up in Canada, there's sort of a certain amount of culture that you just sort of take on.
Yeah.
So I'd love to sort of understand from your perspective, like, what are some of the assumptions, because I know you also work with foreign brands trying to get into China. Yeah. What are some of the assumptions or the misconceptions that foreigners tend to have about China? And also for you personally, right, before you actually came to work here, what were some of the things that you thought about here that maybe turned out to be different? So both for you personally and with your clients.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it's easier to adapt because, I would say I'm proud to be Chinese, and that's easier in a way. However, China is so complicated. They're talking about misconception. I got a lot of feedback from our hotels thinking doing anything in China is very cheap. Okay, I think that's one of the major misconceptions that people say, we see made in China product everywhere. So it must be cheap, right? If it's expensive, it will not be made in China everywhere. So a lot of times when they do not have enough knowledge about the China market, especially on marketing, online marketing, what we are focusing on, they do not know how complex the market is and do not know how expensive, things could be in China and to do it right. Okay, so that's, the first major misconception. And the second one is technology. A lot of people thinking Chinese is a copycat, which it was before. I would openly think it was. But now, we see so much technology evolving in China and so much new channel that originated from China that got worldwide exposure, and they are originated from China. So the perception is, they are just copying what we do. So we just follow what we did and they will follow us. But in fact, it's the other way around. If you really look into the China marketing, is what they do, now the Western world is following. So if the hotels or our clients do not have enough understanding in the real China market, they will always make wrong decision. Because even for me, as I told you, I worked for a digital marketing agency before, a UK one. And I was like vice president level at the time, so I know all the metrics and everything, to say, oh, how to convert, do this and do that. But if I use the same metrics in the China world, it's probably going to, put me in the wrong direction. And that is something that I myself have to learn and adapt and say, okay, this is not the way it works. Okay, although we say Facebook to us is more social. Okay, and the equivalent of Facebook in China is not that social. It's a social e-commerce platform, and people have to understand the difference and not to use the same approach. And I'm learning every day about China to say, how we can adapt, and also, the advantage of me is to translate what is happening to an understanding for the Western world. Because I also know what they are thinking. I was there, I was one of them. I know, what they are thinking and what they go through. And then I want to bridge them to say, how you can see things in China. And that's the way, and helping them to make the right decision. So those are the challenges. Culturally, now still happening in China, that Chinese do not trust people. I just heard on the taxi on the radio when I taking a taxi over here about talking about the vaccine. The big thing happening now about the fake vaccine from a pharmaceutical company in China. Things like that can still happen in China. So if you are from the Western world, you hear about that thing, you're thinking, oh, it's pretty much very primitive in a way. But they cannot see the more advanced part of China, and I think that's some balance, that's some misconception that everyone has to catch on and be willing to learn the real China before, doing any business in China.
Yeah, you mentioned there some of the challenges, and I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into that. Right?
Yeah.
So for you personally, whether it's when you were working here before or then when you started running Compass Edge yourself, what were some of the bigger obstacles that you've encountered, and how did you overcome them?
Okay, of course, for the result-oriented Westerner hoteliers, we talk about that during breakfast too, is they want to see ROI, right? They want to see immediate result, which we know that's not going to happen. And I think that will be the major obstacle. We talk about, you have to keep on doing the thing, and you stay on long enough, then you will see some result. A lot of times people or our clients will ask us, oh, like for that kind of money, which is not a lot of money, okay, what do I get back? They want to justify, the return on investment. I understand, because if I work in Canada, like I worked for 4 seasons before, I will ask the same question. I give you that money, what am I going to get back? But in China, it's not really that easy. A lot of brands are really investing for presence. And, if they are doing that, and if you look at, dimes and pennies, to need to get a return on investment right away, that's not going to, balance out to give you what you want. So, to me, it is more education, to hotels or to our clients on the expectation. Okay, because we believe we are doing the right thing, and that if they continue to work with us, we'll bring them somewhere, and that is the barrier. And on the consumer side, because B2B, we work with hotels, but at the end of the day, we still want the consumer, the Chinese consumer, to be booking or to be aware of our hotels. So on the consumer side, I think they are spoiled. Okay, I think Chinese are being spoiled. Everyone tried to please them. They got everything, okay, free of charge. And they just feel, take things for granted and say that is supposed to be. So that's the challenge that I face, because that's the consumer market. Okay, that is what they expect. But on the other hand, the overseas suppliers do not see it that way. Okay, they will have to get something back. So again, how to reach the Chinese, the target Chinese market with 1.3 billion. Okay, people say, oh, I just want 0.0001%, I'll be happy. But how to find that 0.0001%? That's the challenge. That's the difficult. That's the expensive part, right? So, to us, is to help to fine tune and match up, what we can with the limited resources that we have on what they need. So that is actually the challenges for our business in China.
You worked in hotels before.
Yeah.
You have a good experience in that industry, and I'm wondering, how did you find that niche? Right? Like, so the niche with Compass Edge. I know that you explained a little bit the transition part before.
Right.
But I'm wondering, like, why, for you personally, why hotels? Why independent hotels? And why specifically digital marketing for independent hotels? Like, what is it about that you find interesting, or that you decided this is the place that I want to spend my focus in my career?
Actually, I start with a very good luxury brand, Four Seasons, and that is a perfect, excellent training ground for me, and I love that, and I'm still a fan of Four Seasons. So, but moving on, I work for independent hotels, and you can call me stupid, but to me is I can see their potential. Okay, especially for the China market, more and more Chinese look for authentic local experiences, and they try to deviate. Before they want consistency, they want to stay with a chain, and now more and more with the information on internet, on social media, they say, oh, I want to stay as somewhere unique, somewhere special. I want to really experience, the destination. So I see huge potential for independent hotels in the different market to capture the Chinese outbound tourists. So actually, I see that as a huge potential market. And for me personally, because of my work with small luxury hotel of the world, I am that type of travelers. So I myself will pick an independent luxury hotel to stay, to experience. And that give me some like a similar thinking path of how I can market them to the audience. So and I also can see the challenges that they face, that without a company or consulting or things like that, it's very hard for them to keep up with China market every day. Okay, I was doing a presentation. I will be doing a presentation later this week, and now it's on my third or fourth draft. And the reason why is every day there's new news, and I want to put the latest news on the presentation. Okay, just this morning, Marriott announced that they have the big brand day on Tmall. Okay, and they are doing facial recognition check-in. So, I used another example on my previous presentation, and now today when the news is out, I have to change it because I want to change it to the latest. So to me is, how can an independent hotel, how can someone, have that resources? How can company have that resources to know that much about the China market? So as I say, you can call me stupid, but I'm passionate to help independent hotels. I want to say, okay, we understand you don't have a lot of resources, both human resources or even financial resources. But, the urgency is, we know we need to get you in there, because the later you get in, the more expensive, and you're getting nowhere. Okay, the space is already crowded. So let us help you to get in there. So, I'm passionate to help independent hotels to get into that arena. And I think, sometimes when you are really passionate about something, then you will you are focusing your energy in what you like to do. So that's an area that I think I'm really passionate in, and that's the area I think I can help independent hotels to get into this complex China online world.
And so when you look at the Chinese culture and the differences in the culture and the language barriers that are there, how important would you say it is for people who are trying to run businesses here to be able to speak the language and to understand the culture?
I think definitely understanding the culture is critical. Okay, but it doesn't matter whether you are, Chinese or Irish or whoever. To me, there are a lot of people that are immersed in the Chinese culture. Okay, so as long as you understand the Chinese culture, as long as language is important, but up until a certain level, I would say. Okay, we do have our joint venture, as I told you, in Wuhan, and I think that is the balance. I honestly think you need a team of people who are Chinese, because you really know, like, real Chinese, local Chinese, what they do, what they think, okay, and then how they interpret things. But what I say about the bridge is sometimes what they think needs to be balanced with what our clients want. Okay, so with the language that they can speak, with every input that they can give, and then plus us in the middle to balance that out, I think that will make a good combination. So to me, it's the people going into the Chinese business definitely need to appreciate the Chinese culture. Okay, whether you agree to some and not agree to some, whatever you see, you just have to embrace it, because if you don't like it, I always believe if you don't like something, you cannot do it well. So you have to like that, okay, in order for you to succeed and be creative and say, okay, how can I make it better? If you think it's not as good now, okay, what can I do to make it better? So that's always my passion to do that. So I think understanding the culture is good. And I will openly say it, I'm not very good in Mandarin, as you know, which a lot of people do not believe. But since I kind of grew up in Canada and I was born in Hong Kong, we speak Cantonese. So Mandarin is not my mother tongue at all. Okay, so probably you speak better Mandarin than me. But to me, is I understand the culture. I can communicate with the team. I can do a lot of things. So to me, that is important. The understanding, the appreciation part, and to blend it in what you're doing. Can be some elements for success in China.
You have a team here in Hong Kong, and you have
Yes.
a team in Wuhan.
Yes.
And part of it's the joint venture, so it's kind of
Yes.
like you have that combined team.
Yeah.
Could you give us a little bit of your understanding of, like, what's the best way to hire people, like to find the right people? I hear a lot from entrepreneurs here, one of the biggest challenges is finding the right people and then keeping those people, because people move so quick here.
Yeah.
So what's your process for taking people on? And then how do you keep the people that you want to keep?
For Hong Kong, it's a little bit different. Hong Kong, because Compass Edge has its own team in Hong Kong before, account managers and such, working with independent hotels. So we kind of transformed that team as well to what it is today. So instead of focusing as much as on one side of the business, goes through education and things, we train them on how to do things, and with them working with the IT team and the marketing team in China, that gives them enough exposure to get on with what they're doing. One interesting thing that we do is how to keep people in Hong Kong is flexibility. And I think that is originated from Canada, that home-based or work-at-home positions are quite normal, but it's very rare in Asia, in Hong Kong. But we have very good people, and they want to take care of their kids, or they want to have their own flexibility in schedule. Some live quite far away, about an hour to the office. Because Hong Kong, the real estate is so expensive, so they live quite far away. And we give them the option to work from home if they want. And with technology nowadays, I travel a lot. I've been in touch with them all the time. That's no issue. So I think it's some trust that I have with them that they can produce. And of course, we have group meetings, a lot of times. But in other times, they have the flexibility on when they want to work and where they want to work. And that's one way I keep a good team in Hong Kong. And I think that's the way we also maintain international clients. For example, they're in Europe, and the time zone is different. And they are quite surprised that our team can respond to them even late at night. And I think that's the advantage. You give them the flexibility. They do something maybe during 4 o'clock, taking care of the kids, and now at night they pick up the emails again and response. So actually that worked quite well for me. I have I have no problem with that. So that's how we keep a good team in Hong Kong. For China, we joint venture, and that is a technology company in Wuhan, and they have their offices and everything in Wuhan. And we have a very, very good, dedicated person working for us. And I think in China, some appreciation, I do not know why, but that goes a long way. For example, the guy that we, is quite primary to build website for our accounts. He just got a baby girl, okay? And we just do something very normal, okay? We just, send a small gift, baby gift, and, do this and do that. And he is really appreciating what we do, and seeing us as part of the team, although from a distance, Wuhan and Hong Kong, but this is how the two teams work very well together. And of course, money talks, in a way, and I will not lie to say, like Chinese New Year's time, some red pocket money or some bonuses help to retain them as well. But those are little things, but I think it's more appreciation. Maybe because of my background, I tend to show more appreciation when they do good things as compared to typical Chinese company, and maybe they like it. I don't know, but I think it's also the open, like they are open to give their advice, feedback, and I would take their opinions into account, that kind of thing, that they find quite interesting to work for a company like that as compared to typical Chinese company. So that will be kind of my tips on retaining good employees.
For the speed of business here, because things change quite rapidly, especially in the digital marketing space, right? How do you keep up with sort of the constantly changing market? You mentioned earlier about your presentations and always having to add bits and pieces here and there. So how do you find that information? How do you make sure that you're up to date?
That's a very interesting question, because I think no one can be an expert in China marketing or China online, and we are all better together. So I have a very good connection on LinkedIn. I have a very good connection, on WeChat group, that a lot of good people that they are very open to share information, not necessarily for the hotel industry, but general. Okay, and of course connection, how to get involved with people from WeChat, and to get to know the right people will get you some tips. And to be honest, we are not trying to tap into the most advanced arena, okay, because our clients is not even at the baby step. So we are not trying to catch up with the most newest things, to try things, or to have tons of money on campaigns and things like that. We are definitely not in that area. But with what we are doing, we test it. The good thing is we have so many clients, so we can pull together and say, okay, we can do things like this and see what the result is and test it out. And I think also, whatever they cannot do with the budget that they have, again, if we pull things together, we are strong and can do things together. So with all the news that I learned, we actually formed a group called China Ready Hotels Group on Facebook, because it's for overseas hotels. And for every news that we subscribe to, that we think is relevant with the statistics that we got, infographics, all the new things that hotels are doing. We actually have some tools to capture keywords on what's happening, and we post it on the China Ready Hotels group. And they are not necessarily our clients. We welcome any hotels to join the group, and they can learn if they spare 5-10 minutes of their time every day to read about the news. And that's my belief. Okay, is you need to know more. The more educated you are, then we can be better together. So that's how we keep up. So other people, about Philippines, someone just posts about Philippine airline, what they do about the China market. So we actually learn from our clients too. They read something, they interesting, they forward it to the group, and everyone shares. So I think information sharing is a way on how we keep up, and also through learning and testing what other hotel has done, and sharing the result and how to do better, give us some knowledge on moving things forward.
So one of the things that I often ask is about the importance of time here in China on the ground.
Okay.
Now, I think it's an interesting question to ask you because I think most of the brands that you're working with, like either they've probably never been in China or they might have just visited.
Yes.
But very unlikely they've actually ever lived here or worked here, right? So I'm trying to get your perspective on how important it is to be able to be on the ground in order to take advantage of or leverage the growth of China to grow your own business.
I will give you an answer that may surprise you. Actually, I think, on the ground is important. Like, we just mentioned, understanding, appreciating the culture, or even the language is a plus, okay? But sometimes, I use the analogy that you won't ask somebody, like a Caucasian looking, to ask them about opinions about Google. And I do not know why sometimes overseas hotels will just rely on some Chinese-looking face person, or real Chinese, but not just Chinese-looking, but Chinese, to ask about their opinion on China Online. So that I find a very interesting phenomenon, that they believe any Chinese know everything about China. So that's why, when you ask me the question how important it is on the ground and everything, depending on what they want to achieve and who is on the ground. So if somebody is on the ground, selling bananas, that's not going to help you to sell your hotel. The experience will be different. Whether you're targeting luxury travelers, which is a very niche market, or what are you targeting? Is it possible to just have somebody on the ground to be able to zoom into that segment and be able to give you the knowledge and everything? And if not, then what is the importance of having someone just on the ground to do this? So, I do not know what your other interviewees answer, but to me I think the important thing is to find the right partner, the right people who understand your business and who also know about the Chinese market, and whether they're on the ground or not, if they can be knowledgeable enough to know what's going on and focusing on what you want to focus on, I think that is more important than to be on the ground, because there are so many people on the ground that basically may not be the one that will give you what you want. And I think choosing the people on the ground will be important. And of course, if you've got a great person on the ground that knows everything, what you're focusing on, your niche market, that would be perfect. But what's the art of having someone on the ground to be able to match up exactly what you want? And I think that will be more a challenge. So instead of looking for someone on the ground, I think it's more matching up with your expectation, with what you are targeting, and with that will be more important.
So being in hospitality and being in tourism, which I think is one of the booming markets with China right now, and it's one of the ones that seems to keep going. What do you think are some of the untapped opportunities that still exist for people if they're trying to get into that market here?
I think right now people's perceptions about Chinese on bus tour, people do not spend money, gradually removing, because they see more Chinese traveling on their own. We call it like FIT, free and easy travel. They see more Chinese abandoning the flag, the bus tour, and do things on their own, and even go to the edge, go to the extreme to have very unique experience. And I think that is where the market is growing. And that's when, I talked about it a little bit earlier, that's the advantage of the independent hotels, because that's the local experiences that the Chinese want right now. And as I am Chinese, and as you can be as Chinese as you wish, we all know Chinese like to brag about their experiences. And when people think they want to go to places that other Chinese have been to, that's not really the case for the niche. They want to go to places that people have not been to, Chinese not been to, not done anything, so they can brag about it. So, I see the opportunity is not to go with the mass, but to create some unique experiences on what they can talk about. I do not want to negatively use the word brag, but what they can talk about on social media, what they can share, and that will be an interesting area of growth, for my portfolio.
If you were starting in China from scratch today, let's imagine you didn't have the network or the experience that you have.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for yourself or someone else that's in that position? It's looking to get into the market today, but they don't know where to start.
Partnership, definitely. I do not think at this time you can get into China without any proper partnership. And because I was doing the presentation, so I have all the information. Google cannot get into the China market, but they invest 550 million on JD. So you can see company of that size. Okay, actually they want to get into China. They invest in Chinese company. And more hotel specific, Marriott joint venture with Alibaba, Accor, a French hotel group, tap into C-Trip partnership, and also things that hotels do are tapping into partnership, and not to do much advertising, but even my company, we co-founded an alliance with Lingland Hospitality, with China Southern Airlines, and Guangzhou New Travel Services.
So if people are looking to find out more about you and your work, whether it's your writing or your presentations, what's the best place to find you online, and how could people reach out to contact you?
Thank you for the question. Actually, we have our corporate website, www.compass-edge.com, compass-edge.com. And I'm going to make a joke. When we first started the company in 2008, people always say compass what? And they do not get the word edge. But now, after so many years, we know the Samsung phone, they have Galaxy Edge. We know Microsoft, they have the Edge OS, and now we call the newer generation the Edge generation. So I'm really proud and say, that's one thing we do really right, is to get the name right. So you can find me on compass-edge.com. I have all my articles there. We do have our Compass Edge channel on YouTube. You can find our videos there as well. And I'm on LinkedIn, and I welcome all associates and every people interested in the China market to join my network, and I post on there as well. So many ways to find me. Thank you so much.
You, Anita.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much.